This episode is brought to you by the IFS Institute, now enrolling for the all-new IFS Online Circle program, a 6-month foundational course for professionals looking to provide an IFS lens to their practice. This updated and enhanced program offers fresh insights, expanded demonstrations, and deeper experiential exercises, all led by two of IFSI's top trainers, Pam Krause and Crystal Jones. If you've been waiting to begin your IFS journey, now is the time. Learn more and register at www.ifs-institute.com. Welcome to Season 6 of the One Inside an Internal Family Systems podcast. I'm Tammy Sollenberger, author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about their inner world and who have a desire to connect to that authentic self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to bring to the podcast Pam Krause and Crystal Jones. Welcome the both of you. Super excited to see you today and just have you on the podcast finally. And so we're going to start. Well, I guess I was thinking about how to introduce you both. And I decided I'm just going to say you're both lead trainers because we would take the whole time to actually say all the things that you do and all the things that you've done. It would take the whole time. And so we're not going to do that. I'm just going to say you're both lead trainers for IFSI and you've been around for a while. And so we're just going to have a talk about IFS and you and whatever else comes from this conversation. I'm just excited to hang out with you. So let's start where we always start, which is where you are in the world and what you would see if you look out your nearest window. And Crystal, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah, you must have saw me looking out my window
I
already.
did, yeah.
I am coming to you from Spotsylvania, Virginia. I usually say Fredericksburg because that's what people are usually familiar with. It's about an hour from Richmond, Virginia, and maybe a little bit over an hour from DC, depending on traffic. I am looking out of my window, and it just looks kind of dreary today. Um, Yeah, it's just kind of a slow morning, kind of dreary. You see some of the trees and stuff in bloom a little bit because the weather has been really nice. But now we're sitting at like 45 when most of the days this week have been around 70. So that's what
Oh,
I'm looking
nice.
at my window. It's a little dreary today.
I love it. Thank you. And what about you, Pam?
Well, I'm actually not at home. My home is actually in Pennsylvania. Right now, I'm in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I'm in a little town called Tuck. And when I look out my window, I see the Currituck Sound, which is this beautiful body of water. Yeah, I'm on this little barrier island that's between the Atlantic Ocean and the coast of North Carolina. So that's what I'm seeing right now. It's a very peaceful place for me to be. So
Well, so I think I just start with when did you both, because you have different IFS stories. And so I'm curious about what brought you both to IFS. And I know it's a long story to how you got into IFS to how you become trainers is probably a long story, but I'm curious about that for both of you, like about your journeys.
So I was a newly minted therapist. I'd been out of uh, I went to graduate school like in my late 30s. And so I was a brand new therapist. Someone told me about Hakomi, and I was doing a Hakomi training. And during that training, the guy who was teaching me had met Dick Schwartz and was working with Ralph Cullen to bring Dick to Connecticut to do a training. And I don't know, I didn't know anything about IFS. I just somehow knew I had to be there. So I took this training. I drove 5 hours to take this training, and that was over 25 years ago, and I've been hooked ever since. From then, I just continued. So that's and I don't know why I knew I had to do it, but I just did, and then as soon as I found it, it just made sense to so much of what I personally experienced.
I love that. And Crystal, what about you?
Yeah, I got introduced to internal family systems through a friend who was just sharing her own personal work with me, and this was a time when I hadn't heard about IFS. I was just really listening to this beautiful work that she was doing. And then finally, she shared with me, um, probably years later, she shared with me that she found out what this modality was, and it was called IFS, right? Like, but in between that time, I remember, just getting some, like taking a lot of notes around, you know, what was happening, and I was like, "Oh, I want to be with my system in that way. I want my therapist to go that deep with me, like, because I was really accustomed to just talk therapy, really, and CBT, and all of those modalities have their space, right? But um, she was just going really deep in beautiful ways. So later she shared with me that it was internal family systems. So I'm going and looking up everything on internal family systems. I got this book and just started practicing with my clients, like the basics of just understanding parts, right? And the different parts of ourselves. So I was just in that lane. And so in 2017, I saw a training that Frank Anderson was offering. It was an intro to IFS. And so I took that training and I was hooked. Um, and in that training, folks were saying, well, we're getting ready to do a level one. And this was when level ones, you could just like get into it like the same day. So I was able to get a scholarship at that time. And then I entered the level one. And guess who was teaching it? Pam. Pam was
Oh, wow.
teaching the level one. So that was the beginning of my journey to IFS.
I love that. Pam, you've been around for a bit longer than Crystal, and so I'm curious, um, what have you seen change? Like, what's different in IFS world?
Well, what's really fascinating? The core of the model has not changed at all. It is really the same fundamentals. I think what's really changed is this perspective that we're bringing to the model. When I started and we all view the world through our own perspective and our own lens, right? And so the way the model was created was really through Dick's perspective. And then as more and more people were drawn to the model, the perspective started shifting from a white upper middle class man to broaden, including female perspectives, and then including, so wonderful that, the model has now become so interesting to so many people that we just have a hugely diverse group of people coming to use the model, and that has changed our perspective greatly. So we look at how we deal with protectors slightly differently than we did before, and also really incorporating legacy burdens, but also cultural burdens, the impact of the larger culture, and not just focusing so much on the personal or direct burdening. So I don't know, Crystal, you probably have a lot to say about that also.
I do. And just kind of along the lines of what you were sharing, right? Like the more identities that are coming into this space and the more, identities that intersect are coming in and saying, how can this model like really work for the people that I'm serving? And how can this model work for me, right? Based on language, ethnicity, race, abilities, culture, learning styles, right? Like, so as we were welcoming more people in, not only are they asking that question, but those questions are kind of adding the richness to the model because we're like, oh, right, like these are some areas that maybe this model didn't consider, right? So I feel like I'm on the job learning and adding even to these teaching pieces because people are saying how they want to see themselves in the model, right? They want to see how it applies to them.
I love that the core hasn't changed, like, the core of the model hasn't changed, and yet it's evolved, and there is this sense of we're still learning and we're still being curious, right? So this truth, sort of the truth of the core of the model hasn't changed, and yet there's all this curiosity to different perspectives and how we can apply it and how it can grow us, like, not just how the model can grow, but how it can grow in us.
Yeah, it's always felt to me like a living, breathing model. Like, here's our core, but here's how we're deepening, and here's how we're expanding, and you're right. It's so client-centered that we need to stay curious, right? And just like for Dick, like Dick's clients taught him the model. There are now so many different people that are teaching us to to apply the model, to teach the model, to incorporate the model in ways that make sense to whoever's sitting in front of us. So,
Just think some of these adaptations, right? Because I think in a sense the foundation of I like how you say that, Pam, how the foundation of the model is the same, but we are deepening. And sometimes I think I kind of sit with, you know, well, I'll just give an example of like self, right? Like how we conceptualize self as the 8 C's and how people are really like putting their own language to, how they experience self and how different cultures experience self, right? And if we are not aware of our clients' identities, right, then we might miss it if we're looking for the 8 C's, right? Like some folks will hear it and say, "Oh, self to me feels like dance." Right? Because that's what we do in our culture, like, to bring forth our joy. Um, self somebody told me, "Self feels like chi," and I'm like, "That's well, if that's how you're resonating with it, right? Like, that's what it is, and that's true to your culture, right? Like, the idea that this like self while it's a concept in IFS, many cultures have like this spiritual some similar, right, spiritual practice that talks about what we know in IFS as the self, right? So for someone in a Christian experience, it might be the Holy Spirit, right? Like um, one of the trainers shared in Spanish speaking cultures, like they don't have a word that translates to self. It might be to be. And excuse my translation, it might be ser, which means to be, right? So just really being more inclusive of how people experience what we know to be as the self and also giving credit to, all these beautiful spiritual practices that people already resonate with and a lot of people are already practicing and to say this is similar. This is like try this on in your body and begin to see what that feels like. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how if we know this was coming up for me as you're talking, like if we're curious about our client's culture, then we can listen for that because I have a client who like family loyalty is incredibly important in her culture. And so when she's sort of showing self towards a part, there will be this aspect of loyalty. And to me, I was thinking, oh, that's a part, like a part that feels like she needs to be loyal. But to her, it wasn't. Like, to her, that's part of what self looks like. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And there's a part of me that was kind of like, we don't argue with protector. There's a part of me that was like, "Well, check and see if that's a part." And it was like, no, it was for her, um, that was self.
yeah, yeah. And you know what, Tammy, like even as I hear that, right, I'm curious about like I would be curious, what does that loyalty hold, right? Because then we can even go into what has been passed down regarding that loyalty, right? I would be really curious about that loyalty and what it holds and what it means and what's been passed down around how we're loyal in families.
So I want you guys to clear up something for me because, I've heard this and I feel like, when Dick says something in a training, and then it spreads around like wildfire. And so this is what I heard recently, and so you guys are gonna clear it up here, and we're gonna make this the new rule, okay? I heard Dick say that we should throw out the Fs. So here's 2 things that I heard recently. One is someone I know was PAing a level 2, and she was saying the people in the level 2, some of the people did not know the Fs, like, didn't know them, weren't doing them, um, and so the trainer had to back up and really kind of reteach the Fs. And then in the training, somebody said, "Well, Dick has said that we don't do the Fs anymore." And then someone else said, "Yes, I heard him say that, blah, 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 blah." So I'm curious what you 2 think about that. If you've heard that and if we've got a little controversy here, I'm curious.
Dick, Dick has been saying since the F's were created, throw the F's out. So this is not new. Okay. So, Dick teaches the model innately, right? Dick, just listen to his clients develop this model. He teaches it innately. When we started teaching the model, we had to find a way to sort of codify what he does. Like, here's the steps of what he's doing. And based on his teaching, the F's were created. It was really only five F's at the beginning, and I can't even remember what they were now. It's been so long. But it was a way to help people conceptualize or put a framework around what Dick was doing. So Dick's never done the F's. There's benefit in learning that flow for new people. The bigger issue is there's about 3 different versions of the 6 F's. Yeah, and so it is, you know, I don't know if it's okay to say this here, but Crystal and I just spent the last year and a half redoing the online circle and bringing some of these changes that we're talking about. The circle Tony and I created, like, 8 years ago or something. It was great, but it wasn't as inclusive and as broad in perspective as we are now. So, one of our questions, right, Crystal was like, "How do you want us what version of the 6 F's do you want us to use?" So, the correct version is the version that's in Dick and Martha's book. Look at that. And the idea is really it's really just about helping people find a part that they're interested by actually having the part blend with them. Like the first 3 F's, the part's blended. Like you find it, you start to experience it in your body. How does it show up? You're not really asking for a lot of information. You're just seeing what it feels like. And then you develop a self-to-part relationship and befriend, really spend time helping the self learn that part. That's the basis of the 6 F's. That's it in, like, 2 steps, essentially, so, I don't know, Crystal, what do you wanna add to that?
I'm appreciating that history, right? Because it has changed, and there are like several different versions of it. And I think for learning purposes, right, it really helps for students just learning this model, right, to have that framework. And then when we get to a space where we are really with folks' system and we really understand, what we're looking for and we're looking for the fears and we're looking to develop this relationship, right? Like once we know what we're really looking for, then I like to tell students, let's not 6F them to death, right? You can have that linear, right, that real linear, like, vibe, and it's like, first I have to do this," without really, like, being in relationship, right? Like, it's about relationship. And so if we're in relationship, with our clients and their system, then we can just kinda get into this movement, in this dance where we can really feel into, what's happening, what do we do next? Because the system will guide us in that, right? If we're in relationship with our parts and when we're in relationship with the client's parts. And so I really think the 6 F's is the foundation for us getting there, right? Because sometimes we're just in the befriending and we're just going to dance there for a while, right? And it's not about getting all the way to the end all the time. It's really relational. And I know you know that, right? But that's what we really try to share with people who are learning this model when they finally get that foundation of the success, that we can come off of that linear way of doing it, once we get a feel for what for how we know how to do this thing. So,
Can
yeah.
I I love what you're saying, Crystal, and can I add one thing about that?
Yes.
It's like, to me, it feels like when we teach people the model, we're teaching the steps to their protectors. Right? So the protectors are learning what's supposed to happen. And you see this with like newer students, right? They want to follow all those steps. They want to have that pattern. And I feel like that's what Crystal's saying. That's what the 6S does. It gives them a foundation. I think what Dick is saying is also what Crystal was just saying. And Mitchie Rose, who was like one of my great teachers and really fundamental in the whole developing the whole unburdening process of the IFS model. But every time Mitchie would do a teaching, she'd have all these handouts, but at the end of every training, she'd rip up the handouts and say, "Now just go out and do it." So I think that may also be what Dick is saying, what Crystal said. You learn it, and then as you start to know your own parts better, as you start to have a better internal relationship, you can let go of that and really focus on the kinds of things that Crystal was talking about. So
So, for people that don't know, what would you say? Because I just started talking about the Fs, but what are the Fs? Like, you don't have to name the Fs actually out, but, like, what are they for? Like, for people that are new to the model, or they're just listening to the podcast for the first time, or they're not, kind of how would you describe what they're for? What are we talking about here?
The 6 F's are really, like, kind of our tool to really begin to develop relationship with our parts. Right? It's a tool to begin to develop relationship with um, our parts act in these extreme roles, and sometimes they don't even know we're present, right? And so the success is how we begin to make the connection with these parts and eventually help them to move out of those extreme roles into more choice into what role they want to play, because like sometimes they can be just leading the system, right? And so
it's a tool both for the therapist and the client, right? Like a new practitioner, when we're first learning, we don't have a super lot of skills about how to get people to get curious about what's going on inside them. And I know when I first started out, I would just say, "Oh, you want to get to know a part? Okay, go ahead and find that part." And people would freak out, like, "What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about." So the 6 F's is a tool to subtly find those parts without freaking people out, without making them so scared that they don't know how to do it or they don't know what to do. So it helpful for the client, but it's also helpful for the practitioner, right? To make it easier to transition from the whatever model of therapy they were using into IFS. So would you agree, Crystal?
I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of IFS. Like when we go into these trainings, we're thinking we're learning how to work with our clients, and we're really learning how to be with our system in a way that, a lot of people maybe haven't, right? And so I think what I love too about the success that it brings this to mind is how, it allows us to pay attention to our body. You do this beautiful meditation, Pam, you know, that kind of slows us down and says, sometimes, we forget that we even are in a body, you know? And so I think the success is also a tool to kind of slow us down and have us really pay attention to the activity in our body, which is usually parts vying for our attention, right? Um, so I really appreciate that somatic awareness. Yeah. That we don't get to pay attention to when we're moving through the world a lot of the time.
What do you think's the next, like, evolution in IFS? Like, what's gonna come?
What I'm noticing around this is, you know, I kinda bugged Pam to the point where I'm messing. I bugged Pam, and she finally took me on and really established a beautiful, mentoring relationship with me for years, right? And I feel like I'm at the point where I notice people. I'm mentoring folks as well, right? And so I feel like I have the baton, but I'm also passing it at the same time, and like folks that I'm sitting with, they come from different experiences, different cultures, but they have so much to say and to add to the space in terms of leadership, in terms of social justice, gender justice, right? And abilities. And like, I'm just sensing this whole group of people coming in and really making the changes they want to see, and the adaptations to this model that they want to see to really fit the populations they want to serve. So I'm excited about the evolution of this model. Even as I'm teaching it, right? People are saying things that I'm like, "Oh, let me add this. Let me consider this. I didn't consider this before. I had no context for it." So I think it's evolving as we sit here, right? As we sit with folks who are in the space and teaching, and as I learn more about my system as well. So yeah, I'm excited about what's to come. I feel like it's happening now.
You know, it's funny, I was out to dinner last night with this young couple that anyway, that we know down here, and the woman's a yoga teacher, and she knew all about IFS. And it was really interesting to me, how much IFS is known even outside of the therapeutic community now. When I started, we had to beg people to take the training. So I've really been sitting with this a lot lately, and especially like the state of the world right now and everything that's happening. And, it's so concerning to me. And the way rights are being rolled back. Anyway, so I I really it feels like energetically there's some way that our model is going to be able to impact that. Not just like what Crystal is saying, like with every client we work with takes it more into the world, more into a variety of communities, more into just I don't know. It's just like feels like it's just oozing out there. And somehow, I don't know, maybe it's my hope that we can have an impact on the world in that way, but I really do think it's happening. I think there's a lot of people who want to take it and make big changes with it. So, I don't know. It has the potential to really change the world. There's no doubt about it.
Anything, I mean, there's so much to say, but anything else that either one of you want to say before I ask my last question?
And just I feel like it's a full circle moment to be able to do this with Pam, um, to do this with the person who has taught me and kind of mentored me. So it feels like a full circle moment to be able to do the online circle, to do the online circle, and then to be able to do it with Pam, and also to be able to share some of that experience with Tony as well. I felt like they've both been mentors to me. So just to sit here it feels really amazing, and just really just honored. Just feel really honored to be in this space and share this space with Pam and Tony.
Yeah. Thank you. And I always dissociate when you do.
I want the world that you all have that y'all this has been out for years, and people have learned this model in a way that's accessible, right? So yeah.
Pam's like, what did you say? Where are we?
I
We're going to the beach later?
no, I can take in enough of it, but anyway, you know, I I wanna look, my relationship with Crystal is really important relationship to me. We started out with me as Crystal's trainer, and we did some mentoring and some support and then worked our way into being, um, I think, really close colleagues, right? Friends and colleagues who love like I love and respect you, and I know you feel the same. And so for me, it's been, it's weird to start out as someone's trainer and then, that relationship often doesn't shift in that way. So it's been like a real joy for me over these years through every little roadblock we run into, every little crisis, everything that you have in close personal relationships, right? To be able to be engaged, Crystal, with you in that way and work through everything and just, it was the model in its most beautiful aspects, right? And all the things I've learned from Crystal, it hasn't been a one-way mentoring situation. I feel, Crystal, like I've learned as much from you as you have from me. So I just want to say that also. And doing the circle the first time with Tony was a blast. Doing it with Crystal was just the sweetest, most lovely experience. And I think we created something really great. I hope. We'll find out.
I love it. So, if I can ask you the last question for both of you, if you weren't doing what you do in the world, you had to do something different, what would you do?
Mm. So I have this dream of living in Jamaica, one of my favorite places, and just having like a natural juice spot in a shack on the side of the road. I just want to wear my hair like long and free and wear flip flops or no shoes, be in walking distance to the beach, and just sell people fresh juices for their soul and for their bodies. Yeah, easy life. I love what I do, and when I think about what would I do if I didn't do this, I would want to be nourishing and caring for folks in a way that also felt nourishing and caring for me as well. Yeah, that sounds
Mm,
good. That feels
that
good
does,
when I
sounds
think
good to
about
me
that.
too.
Yeah.
I know. I was gonna go, "I'll come to your juice stand and hang out
Yeah,
with you
I'm
and chat all
there.
day long."
By the beach, taking care of people's health and enjoying the beach life. Yeah. Growing old. That's what I wanna.
Mm,
Yeah.
that sounds wonderful.
Mm.
Pam, what about you? Do you and I just want to help Crystal with her. We can cut up fruit for
Yeah,
the
I was just gonna
juices. We can like be
I help.
Oh,
waitresses.
I'm not
I can
helping.
do the
I'm just
dishes.
I'm not helping. I'm just gonna sit there and drink her stuff and talk to her all day.
Tammy, I'm signing you up for staff before you change your
Yeah,
mind.
good, good. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. I'm really good at doing dishes.
Yes. I hate dishes, so I'm welcoming that.
I'm good at it. I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a weird question for me because I'm actually moving toward retirement, right? And so I am really thinking about like I'm not I've stopped seeing clients, I'm doing fewer trainings than I've done. So, the thing that I always said that I would do and I'm seriously thinking about doing, this makes me cry sometimes. I want to be one of the people that goes into the hospital and holds the babies that are in the NICU. Like when maybe they don't have, maybe they've been abandoned or maybe their parents can't be there all the time or they're not getting enough. There's just not enough human beings around to just hold them and just rock them. I don't know. For a long time in my IFS career, I worked with kids, and there's something about sharing self energy with kids that feels like a really, really lovely thing to me. So, they tell me those jobs are really hard to get, but I don't know. Maybe I can get one. Yeah, supposedly everybody wants to do it, but I don't know. Anyway.
I love that. There's a little hospital down there. I don't know if they have a NICU unit, but there's a little hospital
No.
down in the Outer Banks. No, okay. Well, thank you both. This was wonderful. Let's do this again. It was really fun to hang out with you both, and I think we should do it again.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us, Tammy. This has been fun.
It has been I'll admit I was scared, but it's been really lovely to hang out with you, and I always love hanging out with Crystal, so
I could do this
Great.
a little longer. I wasn't ready for it to be over. I'm like, "We're finished already?"
I know. I know. We'll have to do it again. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah. Thanks, Tam.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you left a rating, a review, a like, comment, share with your family, your friends. That would mean so much to me. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or on Amazon. You can visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, or you can download a free Get to Know a Should part of you. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and at The One Inside on Facebook and on YouTube. Jeff Schrum co-produces The One Inside, and I am forever grateful for Jeff. Also thankful for Jack Reardon for creating the music, and just thank you for listening. 6 seasons, over 1 million downloads. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you in this community. I'll see you next time.